Today in our Cooking with Becky program, we're making chocolate shortbread cookies. Let's get cooking. Becky, today we will be making chocolate shortbread cookies. I've never made these before, so this is new for me and new for you probably. If you've gotten your ingredients from the library, they'll already be pre-measured. Today I did pre-measure my ingredients, but the recipe will show you what ingredients you do need in case you want to make another batch and you need to measure the ingredients out yourself. Some of the items that you'll need at home will be 2 bowls. I use a smaller one and then a bigger one. You will need a mixer of some sort. You will also need a tablespoon and a teaspoon. I'm using a 1/4 teaspoon and a full tablespoon. I have a little finger guide to help me get from the crevices when I use my mixer. I also have a spatula to keep mixing and pour things out. You will also need some wax paper or saran wrap because at the end of the mixing, you're going to need to put your cookies on the wax paper and roll them up, and then you're going to put them in the fridge for about an hour to let them chill before you actually bake your cookies. So let's get started. Okay, our recipe calls for a 1.5 cups of flour and 1/2 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder to be mixed together. So I'm just going to mix them by pouring them in to my smaller bowl at once. There we go. Mix, 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 mix. Make sure they're all out. Great. And then you're going to need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So I'm just going to pour that in. And I'm going to use my little teaspoon to just mix everything up together, though you could also use your spatula. Make sure everything's incorporated. Okay. Great. Put it to the side. And now we're going to actually put this whole thing to the side. And we're going to move on to our bigger bowl where we're going to whip up a cup of butter. A cup of butter is actually 2 sticks of butter, and you're going to want them to be at room temperature. Do not take them straight out of the fridge to do this. It just won't work well. You want them at room temperature, so leave them sitting out for about a ½ hour is ideal. If they haven't been sitting out, you can always stick them in the microwave for a few seconds and let them soften up a bit. You don't want them melted though. You want them to still have some shape. All right. And now at this point, we're going to take our mixer, and we should be using the lowest setting. This mixer, unfortunately, has the lowest setting is still very fast. So hopefully your mixer doesn't mix as fast, but you work with what you got. All right, so here I go. Do you see what happened? It got stuck in my mixer, and I'm going to take my little pointer guy. Make sure your mixer is off at this point. And I'm just going to take as much of the butter out as I can. Later, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the mixing part off the electronic part, and I'll be able to get the butter out more easily. Okay. This would actually be even worse if it was cold butter. All right. At this point, we are going to add in a 1/2 cup of sugar. I'm just going to add a little bit in, and I'm going to give a mix, and then I'm going to add a little bit more in. You're going to add a tablespoon of cocoa nibs. So I have my tablespoon of cocoa nibs. I'm going to add that in, and I'm going to mix it one more time. Turn this guy off, and what am I going to do again? Yep, I'm going to pull all this stuff out using my handy dandy finger contraption. It's really just a spatula that looks like a finger, and it's ideal because it gets into smaller spaces, such as in between the blades of my mixer. And because it's made of rubber, I know that it will bend a little bit where I need it to bend, which is great. All right. So now that we have our sugar, cocoa nibs, and butter mixture all combined, we're going to get as much of that out as possible. The next step is to actually add in our flour, cocoa, salt mixture. So I'm going to pour a little bit of it in, not all of it, and I'm going to start mixing again. Okay, now I'm going to do a little bit more. I suggest doing this in pieces because it just, for me, it mixes better. Everybody's a little different, but this is my tip for you. Don't do it all at once. So again, I still have some more of that in here, and I'm going to mix up again. All right, so this should be my final addition of my dry mixture into my butter mixture. There we go. That's the rest of it. Let's finish our whipping. Actually, I'm going to use my other spatula to make sure I get all this extra butter off, because shortbread needs a lot of butter to make it super delicious. All right. I'm actually going to set this to the side, and I'm going to give, let's start with this one. I'm going to give, using my spatula, just a little mix in my bowl before I use my electric mixer one more time. Get all of the dry ingredients from the side of the bowl into the middle to make sure they get covered with the butter, because the butter is what holds everything together. The butter is the key to this recipe. All right. And this is another reason why we don't want the butter too melty, because if it's too melty, it actually doesn't hold everything together. We want it to be room temperature. All right, we are almost done. This is looking good. And you know it's looking good. And I'm gonna see if it can come. When it kind of clumps up, do you see those clumps? Nice big, I'm going to pick one up. Nice big clump. This is what we want for our mixture, okay? So if it's too dry or too crumbly, you don't want that. You want that big clump, and that's really all the butter and the goodness. All right. Once you have that, and I don't want to lose anything that's on my mixer too. See how much stuff is still on my mixer? We're going to get that out. So I'm going to release my blades, and now I'm going to use my little special tool. And if you don't have one of these special tools at home, that's okay too. Once the blades are released, if you want to use a tiny spoon, that's fine. Like you could have used the 1/4 teaspoon. That would have worked just fine too. Getting all that goodness out, because this is all going to be our cookies later. Something to enjoy. And if you were smart, I should have told you this before, you need to wash your hands before you start, because sometimes your hands get a little involved. There we go, taking all that goodness out. Little fun secret, because no eggs were used in this recipe, if you wanted to have a little bit of the cookie dough, you could. Because there's nothing in it that would make you sick without being cooked. It's just butter, sugar, salt, flour, cocoa nibs, and cocoa powder. All right. Great big chunks coming out. Give it one more mix with your spatula. Make sure all the dry ingredients on the side get mixed in. And again, when you have a big chunk like this, then you're ready to move on to your next step, which... Hi friends, so if you're like me, you might have forgotten your wax paper at the store. And instead what I have to work with is saran wrap, and that's okay. So I measured out about 1.5 feet of saran wrap, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my mixture, and you see how beautiful that is? You can just literally pick it up with your hands, and I'm going to put it right on my saran wrap. And if your mixture is not like this at this point, if it's too crumbly, you need to just go back to making sure all of the butter is incorporated, because we don't want it to be too crumbly. We're going to put it on our saran wrap, and up, so you can see. All right, so we have it on our saran wrap, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our saran wrap, and we are going to roll our mixture up in it. We're going to make a log. Doesn't look too pretty, but it's going to taste delicious later. So we have our nice log coming out, and we're going to spin our saran wrap. Woo! That's why we have the extra side. All right, and then what we're going to do with our log is we are actually going to put it in the refrigerator for an hour, about an hour, and we're gonna let it chill. Whenever you're making cookies, it's a really good idea to make the batter first and then put it in the refrigerator to chill. There's just something about the way the cookies come out later on. I don't know all the scientific facts about it, but it's delicious. And before we cook our shortbread, we are going to chop it up, obviously, into smaller pieces, and we are going to preheat our oven to 325 degrees. So again, we are going to now put our log of shortbread that doesn't look so pleasant into our fridge for an hour. Okay? And now that we've let our mixture cool in the fridge for about an hour, we're going to take it out and roll it from our wrap. And now, at this point, we are going to slice it into 1/4 inches. And we're going to place them about 1/2 inch apart to bake in the oven. At this time, I've already preheated my oven for 325 degrees. And then we'll let our cookies bake for about 15 minutes. Let's get going. Bake until firm for 15 to 20 minutes. Once the cookies have baked, let them cool and then serve to your loved ones. Enjoy!